grit that I wanted to get rid of. But you can really, you can really feel it, and you can see it happening. So there's like slurry management, they call it, which is when you don't want too much water on them, because if you're constantly splashing water on an actual stone, all of the stuff that's doing the good thing, which is the slurry, it's just being washed away and washed away and washed away. It's also important if, I've got like a pond here with, I don't mind so much when it comes to the synthetics, but when it comes to the naturals, I'll use water from here because that's clean water going onto my stone, which is clean, as opposed to splashing water from the pond onto the whetstone, which I would do at the lower grits because I'm not so concerned about putting the scratch in. It would probably still be better to use water from, a tap or something else, but I don't, because I only really find it's a big problem when I get through to the final grits, although that's probably not true. Yeah, you can do like the synthetics though. I don't know what it is about the synthetics. They don't tend to, I'm just not so worried about it. But when it comes to this, what I'm doing is trying to get the slurry as fine as I possibly can, which in turn gives you a really fine edge and a fine polish. And if you can polish stuff and get fine polish on something, you can see the character in the steel. And when it comes to using stuff like wrought iron, or some of the stuff that I've been making recently has been, instead of using ferric chloride and coffee and things like that to etch the pattern out in the steel, I've been trying to use a mixture between soft and hard steels or alloys, so that when I polish, the pattern comes out, as opposed to using acid. So in a weird way, it feels like it's more, it's a combination of my ability at forging and forge welding and selecting alloys and the techniques you can use on the stones that brings the pattern out. It's not the be all and end all of everything. I just feel like, sorry, I'm just gonna swap stones again. I just feel like it's the right way and it's what I like to do. It feels very, as you said earlier, it feels very kind of zen, which is a nice thing, because like after you've spent hours smashing around pieces of metal with hammers and power hammers and like having generators running and grinders going and everything going left, right and centre, to be able to come and sit in a corner next to a fire with a stereo going and really enjoy slowly refining the thing that you've made, it's just a pleasurable process. There's a certain amount of immediacy that people have in the world today. No, I'm going to talk complete crap now, but people want stuff now, and they want stuff on demand, and they want stuff, if you can't get something delivered the next day, then you'll search through Google until you can find the thing that's going to be delivered tomorrow, because that's ridiculous. Why is it going to be 3 to 5 days delivery? And we've got this kind of like instant gratification vibe going on in the world, I think, which is great, but I don't think it's beneficial to my mental well-being. My life is making knives at the moment, and that's what I like to do, so I should be happy doing it. If I'm going to use these beautiful bits of stone that somebody's carefully selected from certain mines in Japan that their great-great-granddad found, katanas and samurai swords used to be polished with the same type of bricks, possibly even the same bricks you're going to buy. That provenance, and again that history and that story of the object and the thing, is totally important to me, because it's telling me the story of what's going on, of where it's from. It's sourced, and it's nice. It's got again, the hippie in me is saying it's got a soul. It's just got like the feel to it. Modern abrasives, belts, great. Synthetic stones, great. But there's a certain appreciation for a natural product like wood or like stone or like wrought iron or steel that you've smelted yourself, that is puts you in touch with the way that it's made, where it's from and how it's come to be. So like if I can, which is what I'm going to play with a little bit in the future, I'm going to smelt my own steel, forge it, and then polish it on bricks. Then the idea being that the higher the polish you get, the more character you can see through the steel. If I spent ages making a piece of steel with character and then polish it nicely, I'm passing on almost the information about how it's been made through the way it's been polished and forged and put together, I think. As a working tool, a knife doesn't need to be a mirror polish. It doesn't need to have a super shiny mirror polish on it. That's completely unnecessary for its function. However, food doesn't have to taste good. That is completely unnecessary for its function. The only thing that taste has got to do with is to tell us to not eat rancid stuff. But we derive pleasure through things tasting good. The same as, like, you know, aesthetics, that stuff doesn't have to look nice. Architecture doesn't have to be beautiful. You know, a box is just as good to live in as a nice country mansion. But if certain aspects are looked after and designed and like thought about, then you can derive more pleasure through it, which is very hedonistic in a weird way. It's very part of the, you know, first world civilized kind of like base needs are being met, so let's think about how we can enjoy ourselves more. So that's when it comes to polishing stuff, like, yeah, your base needs, get it sharp, get the material to do the thing that you want it to do, and then what I want to do is push it a little bit further and make that piece of steel or that piece of cladding just sing a little bit, you know, just take it that little bit further, you know, turn it up to 11, just like push it a little bit more, because I can mostly, like I don't need to, but if I enjoy it, then there's no reason why I shouldn't. Might put a few extra quid on a knife, but I don't have to sell lots of knives to, you know, to make a living. And I'd rather sell knives that are very, very, very high quality, because that's the way I learn. If I don't push myself to learn new things, my practice would stagnate, I'd be bored, and I'd have to go and find something else to do, because learning is like part of, you know, it's a quintessential part of life. It's something that I enjoy. I enjoy the you know, the initial learning curve of things, when you're like, oh, I've learned how to do a thing, I've learned how to forge, this is great, I can do forging. And then you sort of, there's always those sort of plateaus where you're like, oh, I get it, but like it's going to take a little while to get good at this. And if you stick at it and you maintain your practice, and you practice and practice and practice, then you get better. And that's through hard work, you know. Natural talent's great, but if you can't see what you're doing and refine what you're doing, then there's no good, is it, really? So it's the same thing with polishing and sharpening and whetstones, that like, actually, to get what I want out of the piece of steel, I need to have the right whetstones, which will do the right thing, and practice and like practice and like practice, and like each one of these stones wants a different pressure, wants a different, they've all got a slightly different feel. Some of them, the finer the polish you go, the less pressure you have to apply. But yeah, it's and again, mixing the stones up, so I've got all these different stones, I could put a slurry from each different stone onto a different stone, and it would become a different grit, it would become a different feel, it would do something slightly different. And we're not talking like, oh, it's going to go green instead of blue. We're talking like, oh, it's got a slightly different matte colour, or it's got a slightly different vibe to it. But if you can get something to a mirror polish, see everything that's going on in that bit of steel, then there's something very, very satisfying about that. And it's very, again, people love shiny, it's very primal and nice, but I just quite like that. I mean, that's my life. I play with fire, hit stuff with hammers, and rub stuff on rocks that's like primal and nice, and that's my job. Can you see the colour of that swarf? And it's thick, it's like creamy, yeah, because I haven't put loads of water on it, so it's actually a slurry. So it's a bit like getting your polishing paste or grinding paste, and that is my grinding paste. So actually the stone's not doing much work now, because the stone's come off the surface and broken down and is now sat in suspension in this paste. So what I'm doing is I've got a plane of paste in between the stone and the steel, which is constantly, it's breaking down and breaking down and breaking down, and it will reach a point where it won't break down much more. But that process of breaking down refines the actual grit, and I think it's about understanding that and using that to your advantage, and then you can get some lovely, lovely finishes on lovely bits of steel, which you just can't really do with a synthetic stone, you can't really do with sandpaper. A lot of people, I've done it for years and years and years, but like the synthetic, you know, you can acid etch things and stuff, and that's a really lovely way of getting the character out of stuff, but you need to polish first, and if your polish is no good, then you kind of lose a little bit of character. I mostly do it because I enjoy it, you know, just what I like to do. And if somebody buys a knife off me and they appreciate the finish I put on it, then that is passed on to the right person, you know? But yeah, this is almost ridiculously sharp. I say it was ridiculously sharp when I started, but this is almost ridiculously sharp now.